Hey guys, welcome back. Curtis with Thatturbodakota. So, as you can tell, we aren't in the garage today. Inside the house, it's my favorite part of this whole job. It's time to actually start shuffling around, wiring, cutting, and crimping. So, behind me over here is the 15-foot Holley flying lead harness. And then right there is my wiring diagram. That is the universal coil and plug wiring diagram that I took a PDF file of, took it down to a local printer shop, had it blown up, printed out, and then I had it laminated. That way I can actually take dry eraser marker and write on it, scratch things out, write what wire's going where, etc. So I'm going to turn the camera around. Let's take a look at this stuff. Okay, so what we're looking at is a coil on plug universal harness wiring diagram. I took a PDF file from Holley, took it down to the local printer shop, had them blow it up, and then I had them laminated. And like I said, the cool part about that is I can take those dry eraser pins and I can put markings all over it, wipe them off, change it if I need to. So, hopefully if you're doing a custom wiring job, maybe this gives you an idea, maybe not. You can see some of the stuff I kind of wrote on there is, I got 3 inputs that I am going to use for different things. So that's our PCV system or crankcase breather system pressure, our oil temp, and our coolant pressure. So I got input 1, 2, and 3, so that's something to keep in mind. Also have on there what wires are going to stay inside the cab. So that's marked in blue. The longer purple marks, those are going to go to the smaller shell connector on the firewall for our mil-spec. And then all the short ones, you can see real close, all the short ones through there, they're going to go to the larger one. It's real nice to do it this way. I like doing it this way. It doesn't mean you have to. Like I said, most people are going to use the plug and play harness, but you really need, if you are going to do, a custom wiring and start with a flying lead, I highly recommend you sitting down and getting a game plan together. Sit down, list all the inputs and outputs you want to use, get your wire count kind of together, and then go from there. You need a game plan. You just can't go into this blinded. So next what I'm going to do is I'm going to take those zip ties, I'm going to start going through the harness, and we'll start branching stuff out. So I'll take all of the wires that are going in the interior, we'll put them together, we'll throw a zip tie on them. Then I'll take all the wiring that's going to go to the bigger connector and the larger connector, we'll split that stuff up, we'll put zip ties on them. From there, then we'll start cutting the length. So I'll probably end up taking that thing out there. Haven't decided yet. Either I'm going to take it out there and plug it in, run it the way I want it through the car, mark it, and we'll cut it. Or I can take like a piece of maybe dash 8 hose or something and use that as mock-up, measure the length, and then I'll cut it. We'll see. We get options. It's no big deal. But I'm going to put this thing down. I'm going to start separating wires. Okay guys, so I just want to stop for a second and show you where I'm at. I know I've talked before, long term the truck is going to get a Hemi. So when I wire this thing, I got to keep in mind the current setup and the future setup, because it'd just be nice not to have to pull it apart for a second time. So I got my laptop, I'm looking at the late model Hemi wiring harness as I go and taking that into account. So far, you can see it, stretched out along the house. Both my helpers today are sleeping. They haven't been much help. But what we got going on is this coil right there that I'm pointing to with my foot. That's going to stuff that's going to stay inside the cab. I've got this bundle right here. This is everything going to one of the military bulkhead connectors. It's actually the smaller one. And this one right here, this bundle right here, is actually going to the larger one. So I've kind of went over it, double, triple checked wire count in accordance to wire color, just to make sure, I've got to take, all this stuff into account. I've only have a certain amount of pins I can use in each connector, so I got to factor that in, and I just got to make sure that this harness will be, once we get down the road Hemi, the only wiring I'm gonna have to do is from the firewall to the motor. Everything inside I'll make heavily notated, make a spreadsheet, whatever, so I know what pin in the bulkhead connector goes where. So it's starting to come together. It is a process, and it just takes a while, but again, like I keep saying, is the outcome's going to be great. So I'm almost done here. The next thing we're going to do is, after I get it kind of zip tied up, and I'm going to double check on my wires one more time, we're going to take it out to the truck, get a length measurement, and start making cuts. Dominator ECU on the bracket in the vise to hold it still. So what I did is I just separated the wires out again just to try to make it nice and neat. I know it might not look like that on camera, but it really is, I promise you. This loop right here, I know I said it, I'm going to say it again. Because I'm swapping over to Hemi in the future, I kind of keep that in mind as I go about this. These 8 wires right here are for the coils. If you know anything about the Hemis, is they require a module for the coil packs, and it's going to stay close to the ECU rather. So that's why I wanted to let some extra wire kind of hang out there just for that reason. Again, just for the future, so it'll just stay like that. But I did separate everything out from this connector. I got everything separated out from this connector. I have my 3 biggest and bulkiest shielded wires, cam crank and wideband, tied together. If you run all the way down here, you see a paint mark right there. That is my cut line. So, and then I went ahead and just zip tied them together. So I'm going to make those cuts first. Make sure you know all the slacks out of them. Make sure they're as even as I can get them. I'll make that cut first. Then I'll just make everything else to match. I still have to straighten this stuff out. It's just a little bit entangled. And this is one of those things where I'd rather just take the time and make it nice. There's no rush. This is definitely not a rush. It's not a sprint per se. It's definitely a marathon. So it is about time to get cutting. I am going to check my wiring diagram one more time. Like I said, that's universal coil and plug. I'm going to get my laptop. I'm going to pull the Hemi wiring diagram out. I'm going to verify that there's no other wires needed because now that I think about it, as I'm talking about it out loud, there might be one more wire that I need to loop like this because I'm going to need some slack in the future. Maybe, maybe not. But I'm going to go grab my laptop, pull that up real quick and check it out. And then when we come back, next thing you guys are going to see is the start of some cut wires. Wish me luck. Okay, so I decided to set the camera up, and I'll show you guys what we got going on. First off, I know we talked about this tool. We're going to talk about it again. This particular tool, is made by DMC. I got this one off eBay. They use it a lot in aviation. You need this tool to make these crimps on these little pins. You also need a tool similar to this if you're using just a regular Deutz connector. This is the more expensive option. Even used, I paid about $200 for it. It came with about 3 different heads, to be honest. This thing right here is called a turret. This is probably the only turret I'll ever use. You can get on Amazon. They make a kit with I believe it's like a red plastic kit, and it comes with some tools to release these pins. It also comes with 3 different crimpers, and what that's for is the contacts come in sizes, and each contact can take a X amount of gauge wire, right? So see the 3 different colors, that's for the 3 different contacts for this particular tool and this particular head. So I think there's like a size, believe it's a 20, a 16, and a 12. See, and don't quote me on that. It's not like I do this all the time. But it's pretty slick. So you match the color of this thing up with the contact that you're going to crimp. Then you take this thing right here, and it pulls, and you can turn it. And you take this thing, you pull it out. At least try to pull it out. It's hard for me to do this behind the camera. But anyway, it pulls out because there's actually a pin right there. You're supposed to be able to pull it out and then turn it. So for all the wires that get crimp, they're 20 gauge. So I pull it and lock it in at 20 gauge right there. Then as far as the pins that I'm doing, these particular pins are size 20 contacts. You can see on the part number, see if it'll zoom in. There you go. Part number, and then see where it says 20 on it right there. So then, on the tooling, size 20 contact is red, see it's lined up, and just click it in there. It's pretty slick. Put the contact in there, you strip your wire back, you push it through there, and it's just a ratcheting tool. And then, when it kicks back like that, it's done. No more difficult than that. The most important part is, you have a good set of wire strippers. I bought these, they're Klein catapults. You can get them at Home Depot or Lowe's. The most important part is when you strip your wire back and you insert your wire into your pin, and I'll pull one of these pins out real quick. They're pretty tiny. You guys can see that. I mean, there's my thumbnail, and there's how big the pin is. You see it's got a little hole right there, and then in the side of it, it's actually a teeny tiny little hole. I don't know if the camera is going to pick that up. Yeah, right there. So you should be able to, when you strip the wire back and shove it through there, you should be able to see the wires in that hole, because you want all the, all the wiring to go down there until it bottoms out. And then there should be a little gap between the insulation and the contact, enough that you could probably put your fingernail, your thumbnail in. And that's about perfect. Then you go ahead, you take this pin, drop in that tool like so, and then give her a crimp. No more complicated than that. Definitely something, if you want to take your wiring to the next level, I recommend you doing. I think it's pretty cool. I enjoy it. But anyway, I'm going to get to crimping. Wish me luck. I've already done a couple of these, and one thing I would recommend, just to speed up the process, is try to make some kind of makeshift stop. So when you push your wire through, you get the length the first time. Again, doing a couple of these, I have a rough idea how far that piece of wire needs to protrude past the thing, but I do think they make a stop for this. But if they don't, you could probably just make one out of a little piece of metal or something, but that'll definitely speed the process up. But so far, so good. There's really not much to it. So let me get back at it. So, first set of wires done. All these 20 gauges are done. This includes injector and coil wires. The only other thing I had to do is crimp those 2 12 gauges, or 3 12 gauges, 2 power, 12 volt powers in the ground, and that'll be all for this connector. So it went pretty good. I, took my time, made sure each one was right. You could see me going back and forth a little bit, trying to get that little bit of air gap that I need. But I'm happy with it. Pretty easy. Like I said, just kind of take my time and just kind of work through it. So on to the next wires. Okay, real quick. Getting ready to crimp this 12 gauge. So I figure you can see the size. Hold my hand so it focuses. You might be able to see the little hole. There it is. So there's the little window where you want to see your wires through. And this is substantially bigger than the other one. Already stripped the wire back. So we take it, push it in there like that, and there is just a little bit of gap between the insulation, and then you won't be able to see it on the camera, but if I look through my little inspection window, you can actually see the wires coming through. You might be able to see, you can see a little bit of copper shining through. That's pretty much that. I already set my tool up. So the yellow marker is for a 12 contact, and I set my wire to 12 gauge. So I just take that thing, push it all the way in there, make sure it bottoms out like so. I believe. Gotta check and double check, guys. I want to make sure I do this right the first time, like that. Then just make the crimp, and then when it's done, it's done. And that's it right there. Now what that thing does, it actually crimps it on 4 corners. When you squeeze that thing, it's got 4 little I don't know what you want to call them, little tits or whatever that come out of there, and it gets it on all 4 corners. And the point of that is it crimps it just enough that it combines every single strand of that wire to make it one solid lump. And again, nice tight crimp, can't pull it off. So I just figured I'd show you that real quick, just because it shows up on camera a little bit easier. This thing right here, this is the tool you use to insert that into the connector, and the way you use it is there's a slot in it right here. So I lay my wire inside the slot like this. The biggest part, like try to start towards the end, and then I'll kind of force it through, and it snaps like that. And then once you push it through, it actually hits on the collar of the connector, and that's what puts it in and releases it. So right there like that, and then we take it and force it through, and it should snap. Just like that. And pull it out. Whoop, didn't go in. There it goes, there it locked. These bigger ones, it might just be easier to do it by hand. I don't know about the small one. These teeny tiny ones, though, have a really small tool to insert the thing. But that's it, it's locked in there. You can see it sticking out. Not going anywhere. And like I said, then there's that, we talked about in a previous video, the aluminum back cap. That's what the threads are on there. And we'll put some heat shrink on it. But just figure I'll show you that. Easier to show you now rather than when I'm in the truck populating the terminal. And then each one of these terminals has a number on it. So let's see, the line's up. So there you go. So 1, and you'll see, I'm sorry, it's not a number. It's actually a letters. That's I. Yeah, A, B, C, D, C, yep. So I don't know if the camera will pick it up. You can kind of see it. But so I'll do some kind of like spreadsheet or something so I know where each one of these wires are going through, and then I can populate the opposing side of the motor. But just figured I'd show you guys real quick. Started on the bigger connector. I think that's like J1A or whatever. But anyway, the first thing I did, there's our wideband wires. Went ahead and stripped them back, and there was a bunch of sheeting, so I had to take a razor blade and be really, really careful. But I got them all exposed. There's 220 gauge and a couple 18. Covered up with some DR25 by Raychem, nice and neat. And now we're going to move on to the rest of the wires. Let's keep bumping along. It's looking good so far. I'm pretty happy with it. I want to show you guys real quick what I got to go through to get the sheeting off. It's some pretty thick stuff. Right now I'm working on the cam and the crank. So what I do is I take a razor blade, just a regular razor blade, and I very, very lightly score it. So first I'll go all the way around it. I'll find my length that I want. I'll go around it, all the way around it real gentle, and then I'll take a line and run it up here. Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to catch the wires underneath. And again, I did this very, very gentle. This next thing, the last thing I want to do is score the wires down here. Then I got to keep cutting it back and cutting it back and cutting it back. And we want to avoid that at all costs. But it looks like it's working pretty good. Sometimes I get this little screwdriver in here and just, again, really, really gently just open it back up. It's scored just enough. I don't know if you can see that when I separate it, so you can still see the rubber. So all I'm doing is tearing it. Just got to go easy. Take your time. So it's almost to the end right there, so I can get behind it like this and just pull it off. And that's it. And then I scored it at the bottom through here. And then you've got this foil. Again, this is just shielding wire because this is for cam and crank, so you don't want any interference from anything else. So this stuff you just kind of take, it's like tin foil, and it just kind of really gently pulls off just like that. And we uncover the wires and then strip, crimp, and do it all over again. Just again, just want to show you guys real quick if you happen to come across this. I figure I'll show you the different layers real quick. I should have done that before, but there's that foil I was talking about, right? So first we had that, we score it, pull it off, then you got the foil, then these little pieces of, it just looks like a piece of nylon, really. So we'll cut all that stuff out flush with the bottom, and then right here is some shielding cable, and I might take that and cut it. I'll probably tuck it back in here like this, and then we'll put some more of that Raychem DR25 over it, and tight it up all nice and neat. So again, just want to show you guys real quick if you've never seen what a shielded cable looks like. And the purpose of that, again, is this helps to get a clean signal back to the ECU. That's why they go through these great lengths to do stuff like this, because if your cam or your crank have a dirty signal, the vehicle's just not going to run right or give you a bunch of problems. But there you go. As you can see, the harness is gone, so I just laid it in the truck. So let's walk around here and check it out real quick. So here's what we got. I know. So I goofed up. By the time I got this thing crimped and all the wires laying in one bunch, I definitely don't have enough room to run it the way I wanted to. So that's a big doy on my part. I was going to run it on that side. But really, it's really not that big a deal because I pulled the carpet back. So what I will do is it's going to sit tight up against the box because once I put the dash back in, none of that will touch. Then it'll wrap around through here, right? So it won't hit any of the linkage for the box or anything. Come back down through here, and it's just going to follow the carpet all the way up to here. That's a support bracket for that armrest, and it's pretty sturdy right now, even with it not bolted. So I'll probably take it and cut it right there, run that wiring harness up through here, make a small slit in the carpet, and tie it back in. There looks like there's going to be more than enough area to that harness. That stuff stays in the cab. This is my power and my grounds for my coils and injectors. This is for future use, so that's just going to be chilling there for a while, until we switch it over eventually or whatever. But so this is where I'm going to end this one. I got to order loom. I didn't order loom because I wanted to get all the wires together, and I bunched them up like this, took my dial calibers and measured them. That way I can order that stuff in one shot and not have to order a bunch of different sizes and mess around. So that's it for now. I'll catch you guys later. Thank you for watching as always. Hopefully here shortly we'll be able to wire the stuff on the outside and maybe put the dash back in and fire this thing up for the first time on Holly. See ya.